What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Product Uncensored show. This is the October edition, and what this means is it's October. October is Q4. So I know everyone is thinking, oh, final quarter of the calendar year, we need to do well. So thank you for taking the time to, just listen and chill out with me and my guest. I'll introduce my guest a little later, but I'm your host, Colin, and there are a few things that I'll run through just before we start, right? So as usual, our videos are on YouTube. So if you are going to YouTube, you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And of course, when you subscribe, you must click the bell icon, yeah? YouTube's algorithm, when you click on that bell icon, is better for everybody. Okay, second one is you don't like looking at my face. That's also okay. You can do it on audio. We're on all major podcasting platforms. Usually the one I usually listen to on is Spotify, but everything else is showing up, I don't know, somewhere here or here. I can never get it right. But anyway, and the last one is if you want to support this show, purely voluntary, of course, you can do it at Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the description. And if you don't want to, that's fine as well. See, very fast, right? Okay, let's get down to introducing my guest, and then we are ready to go. We have today another very special episode because this is our first female product leader from Malaysia. If you remember, we had our first product leader that was based in Malaysia when I interviewed Pratik. Link will be up here somewhere. And then second one was I got the CPO of Mind Valley, which was Wuhan, to come on the show. And now we have our third Malaysian guest, but this will be our first female product leader from here. So I'm very excited. She's been making a name for herself in the Malaysian product scene. She's been working with an organization that's been making waves as well. They were recently acquired by Pine Labs. She's now the regional product head of regional head of products for Fave. Please welcome to the show, Wei Jia. Welcome to the show, Wei Jia.
Hi, Colin. I really enjoyed your introduction, especially all the pointing, imaginary pointing everywhere. I can't get it right either.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sorry I messed up your company's.
No, it's all good. All good. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show. As I always tell people in all my previous episodes, one of the things that personally I'm committed to do is to try and get as many female leaders, product leaders, on the show as possible. Unfortunately, not always easy. I've been turned down quite a few times. And then, last episode I managed to get Swati, and then this episode I managed to get you. So very excited, getting two female leaders back to back. So thanks for agreeing to this. And also, also thank you because for those of you who don't know, Wei Jia is also a mom. So she's got her boy to worry about, but she's being really good. And she's just saying, just before we record, if my kid comes in, is it okay? It's like, yeah, it's fine. So yeah, we'll really jump a little bit more into that as well, right? This whole journey of being a mom, being a product leader, how do you balance both? We'll definitely get into that because for me, I definitely want to know. But first, we must always start with the introduction. So Wei Jia, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit more about, the company that you work for as well.
Sure. And Colin, thanks for having me. Super honored to be part of, Product Uncensored. A bit of myself. I've actually, I would say I started my life very much being a generalist. I did a lot of different things. Maybe I'll preface it by, there's this book that someone I really respect gave me. It's called Range, and they talk about two different lives. One is the Roger Federer life, where he did a lot of different things, a lot of different sports. He was actually not just a tennis player. He did golf, football, squash, etc. And then there's Tiger Woods, who's a specialist. So I resonate my career a lot with like the Roger Federer path. So for myself, early, like decades ago, I'm actually a law and accounting graduate. Nothing to do with product today. I graduate, and the reason why I went to that very, very traditional, come from a Chinese family that believe that unless you're law, accounting, engineering, doctor, those are the pillars of success in life. So for me, I was a very filial child. I was also interested in it, went into law and accounting, and also did a ton of internships in law, like corporate law, banking, etc. I just dabbled in a lot of different things. In accounting as well, so worked in the Big Four. When I graduated, I then also went into a very safe career path. I actually joined a sovereign wealth fund and worked in investment management. It's a company called Khazanah, also based in Malaysia. Essentially, they're a government-linked company. They invest in a lot of, your day-to-day brands, whether it's Telecom Malaysia, whether it's Celcom in Axiata. Telco was an area that I worked in quite a lot when I was in investments, or whether it's Malaysia Airlines. These were the type of companies that Khazanah invested in back then. And we were, in a way, the grandparent, the shareholder that is monitoring and managing all these investments. So that I spent the bulk of 4 years. My first career was in that scene. Worked a lot with these companies to essentially oversee them, do a lot of corporate governance stuff. So it was very interesting, but I felt so detached from the operations of the company. I was the sort of person that really liked to build things, sometimes literally with my own two hands, see it come to life, and then grow it. So I was at that juncture in my life where I was exposed to, telco was in a very mature state. So we were looking at where else can we invest in order to grow within that industry. And we looked towards a lot of technology-based companies. A lot of different companies we looked at as potential to invest, some super apps, some SaaS companies. And every time I met these co-founders, I was so impressed by how they were using technology to disrupt traditional industries. You would never imagine that your life, whether it's hailing a taxi or whether it's ordering groceries online, could be so different 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago. And to me, that was the spark of where I wanted to go into technology. So took me years to decide this, by the way. I decided to leave my job. I was like, okay, bye-bye corporate investment world. And then decided that I was going to, I had different choices, and I decided choices to venture into tech, right? Do I want to be an entrepreneur in residence? Do I want to be a product manager? Do I want to be a software engineer? And I actually chose the software engineer path because someone once told me again, it's like, you want to work with a tech company, you got to understand the tech. And I did not understand tech. It was a black box to me. So
sorry.
Yeah.
Just before you continue, right? So you were saying that at that point in time, you were already aware of this role called product management or product manager.
No, actually, you're right. I was not aware, but someone, I did not know what a product. So it was a role that was offered, but I did not know what it did.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay,
it was
sorry.
just, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I don't. Even when I was a software engineer, I didn't know what a product manager was back then. Yeah. And then and then so I decided, okay, I was going to join a boot camp, and back then it was I don't know if you remember, it was like Cheryl Yeo's time. She came in, she was CEO of Magic. She started doing a lot of things in the industry to spur the technology sector. So one of them was actually doing this boot camp, working with Next Academy, establishing this boot camp, right, to build all these back-end engineers or front-end engineers in general in the industry. So I was part of that first cohort. And they were giving out scholarships. So I was like, perfect, I can save costs and learn at the same time. Did that for 9 weeks and then build a first prototype. And it was almost like one thing led to another because I met a lot of really talented friends in the boot camp, and we decided that hey, maybe we can start a company. At that stage, we met a lot of people who wanted to start companies but didn't know how to build it from a tech perspective. So we used that as a building block to be like, my co-founders then, Rizal and Eugene, we came together, we started talking to these co-founders. What do you want to build? Let us try to build the MVP for you. Again, we didn't know it was called an MVP, by the way. We were just like, let's build the first version of your product. So we did a lot of that. And one of the companies was actually Fave or K-Fit back then. And then, and a very long time ago. And then Azumi, my current CTO, he contacted us. He said, I heard you guys have a company. We're looking for some freelancers, also build this segment of our organization. And that was like the beginning of my foray into Fave. We freelanced with Zumi for a bit. And a few weeks later, Zumi was like, hey, why don't all three of you come and work for us? We need engineers. Rizal and myself, we joined Fave. I was excited. I'm like, wow, okay, I've never been a software engineer legitimately before, so let me join Zumi, and Zumi was a really like prolific CTO at the time. I saw him in conferences and I was like, I want to work with that guy. Rizal and myself joined. I was then my first role as a software engineer, really enjoyed it, really loved building stuff. And then I also really enjoyed working with my then head of product. His name was Abhishek, and he ventured. He did a lot of different things as well, like ex-Zomato guy, ex-Grab. And then I worked with him. Didn't know it as well. I was actually working with him on some of the product-related stuff, even though I was in an engineering role. So he asked me to do stuff like, oh, can you do some analytics to study some of the consumer behaviors? And I was like, yeah, happy to do that. I did that when I was in Kazana, so let me do that. And one thing led to another, and he was like, do you want to think about being a product manager? And I didn't know it, but I actually really wanted to. Those were the things that I really liked, like the things that product managers did. I never knew there was a term for it, never knew there was a definition for it. But whatever they did was things I liked, talking to users, learning about user behavior, identifying problems and then solving them. The basic tenets of product that I really enjoyed. And then, here I am today doing product. Yeah. It's a very long intro, Colin.
No, it's fine. I mean, what I always tell all the guests is that one of the amazing things about this show, at least for me personally, right, I won't speak for the rest of the listeners, is that I get to hear all the different stories of how leaders became leaders, right? And that's essentially the crux of why I started the show. I wanted to know how, what is the journey, right? Because I spoke this is like episode 29, by the way. So I've had 29 guests. Almost every single one has had a different journey. Like no two journeys have been exactly the same. So for me, the introduction is actually the very important part because it sets the stage up for like, okay, so now I have more questions. So don't worry about that. That was all good. And like I said,
love the sound of your job, by the way, Colin. You get to talk to so many people and listen to stories.
Well, it's not a job. Unfortunately, I wish I got paid for this. Actually, I lie. But I lie. I don't wish I get paid for this. One of the things that I really had to, when I started this out, was to actually ask myself, like, what would I do if this took off? Of course, you have to think about the eventuality of that. And to me, it was like, I never wanted this to be something that I would do full time. Or this would be my primary, primary bread and butter, because it's different when you do something as a passion and when that passion suddenly becomes your bread and butter.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So but I take your point about, being able to talk to other people. And that's also for me really good because it's an excuse, right? I got questions to ask, I want to know people. I'm like, okay, why, instead of getting a call, why don't I get a show running? Then I get people on the show and they ask you questions.
Right.
Such a win-win situation, right? Yeah. So, but anyway, sorry, this show's not about me, it's about you. Okay, so let's come back. So you were saying about how when you joined Fave, you were the software and you were a software engineer, and then you were working with Abhishek, the then head of product, and then you made that move to be a product manager, right? So if I understand how you mentioned the timeline, Abhishek was the one who approached you and said, "Hey, Vijay, do you want to consider being a product manager?" Was that what happened?
You know what? The facts of it were it's a bit gray now because I felt that there was indication from him, but there was also indication from me.
Okay.
In terms of that transition into product, because I was interested in what he was doing, and he also saw something in me, whatever that, and then we bridged the gap. Yeah.
Okay. So here's the question that I think will be very interesting for everyone to hear. So how did that transition happen, right? Because it's not the usual transition of, I'm a product manager to senior product manager to, director or being a single contributor to being a people manager. In your case, you are literally switching departments or switching roles from one being a software engineer and now you're being a product manager.
Yeah.
And, same company, same number of people, but suddenly you are now joining a different role. So how did you work it out? Did you do half software engineering, half product management, or was there you say, okay, after 2 months it's a clean cut? Like how do you make that transition?
Yeah. So let me dig back into my memory bank how that happened. So now firstly in terms of in terms of realizing that kind of switch, I think it's important that there is intent from the person who wants to make the switch. So whether or not it was casually Abhishek asking me indicating intention, I was very clear at a certain point of time that after all those conversations that I wanted to make a switch. So I actually told him that I want to make the switch. And it's when you express that intention that other people around you will make it happen for you, especially if you really, really want it. Now, actually, that period of time, coincidentally, was also when I was pregnant. So I was pregnant, and I was wanting to take a bit of a longer time with the post pregnancy. I was planning it that way because I actually gave birth to Ben in Melbourne. So my little bloke is an Aussie bloke. So then there was a transition of coming back. And one thing that was great about Fave was they were very supportive of my plans to want to do this. So back then I was still an engineer, I was pregnant. Imagine me like baby bump, I had my laptop coding, that was essentially like the funny part. And the thing is I was the only female engineer in the team. And then the only female pregnant engineer in the team. And then I spoke up, I want to transition into this, but maybe can I do that after I come back from my maternity leave? And he was like, yeah, we will wait, because if you want it and you're good and you got potential, we'll wait. So I did that. I actually worked remotely. And during that remote period of time, Abhishek, how he helped with the transition is he gave me certain product manager experimental tasks to do, things that he didn't have time to give to other product managers who were like doing full-fledged, like executional, like I have a product I need to roll out. He gave me certain more experimental stuff that he wanted to explore, but nobody else had the time. So he was like, okay, for example, can you figure out how to set up an end-to-end A/B testing framework for us? So you execute it as an engineer, but then you also carry out certain tasks as a product manager. And then he framed it like, do it for search, for example, A/B test, set up an A/B testing system for me for search, try out different things, give me an analysis. There's no time frame, which is great because I was like working remote and being pregnant very quickly. But then he get to ease me into that role. So that was very helpful. I actually really enjoyed that. Then I got pregnant and then I came back, and there's a period of time where I was, and we can go into that later, but there was a period of time where I was very, very tired with my newborn. I was like, I can't do this. And then so the company gave me a bit more time with a sabbatical. But after that, when I recovered from my sleep deprivation, then he came back and said, okay, can you come back? And we need a consumer product manager for this team. Just hop into it. And there's no university of product management. There's no, product management 101 crash course. He was just like, just come into it. So I think we were a small enough organization that those kind of opportunities were readily available. even if you're not from product management, which is like I was very grateful for. So he
Mm.
kind of bridged the gap by seeing that, hey, you understand it from an engineering point of view. You had worked with other product managers before in the organization, kind of know what they do. Now you assume that role. And that was essentially how I switched the very beginning of that. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. So yeah, I think few points here, for listeners and viewers. I think one point that Wei Jia made that was really great is I think you need, if you are someone who's trying to break into product management, and if you are a software engineer, similar to Wei Jia's history, I think making that statement of intent is very important. Nothing's gonna happen if you just sit there and wink a little bit and move a little bit. It doesn't happen that way. I think you have to be strategic in just making it known that you have interest in that path, and then let's see whether that has a way forward. I think that's very important. And I think the other one as well, if for those of you who are listening, you're new to people management, I think what Wei Jia has shared around how she was eased into the role, I think is a fantastic example of how you don't overload someone who hasn't been a product manager, right? Again, similar to many experiences, including mine. When I first became a product manager, didn't really know what it was. You kind of interview and they say, "Oh, translate the business requirements and work with engineers." Oh, sounds really good, right? You have no clue what that is. But when you have the opportunity to ease into it rather than have pressure from day one, I think I've seen enough people on the show who've benefited from really being able to learn the ropes, be able to, make mistakes along the way, stumble a little bit, and then you learn. So I think that is fantastic. So yeah, that's really cool. So another question. You were a software engineer. You were Ruby on Rails engineer specifically, right?
Yeah.
And Ruby on Rails engineers in Malaysia are not common, and they earn well. So I'm very curious to know, yeah, did that not come into consideration when you decided to make that switch to product management, right? Because I mean, yeah, product management at around the time I think you made that switch, it was becoming very more popular, more hip. That was like the sexy new shiny thing. But at the same time, Ruby on Rails engineers were in high demand because during that period, I know even my own company at the time were looking for Ruby on Rails engineers, and it was so hard to find. So like for you, like that wasn't a consideration. Like, oh, I could earn big bucks as a Ruby on Rails engineer.
That's a really good question. I mean, if I look back at then as well, with this whole Ruby on Rails growth, demand growth in Malaysia, and not just Malaysia, actually in Asia Pac in general.
Yes.
I think what spurred a lot of the demand was actually these boot camps, because these boot camps were centering their courses around learning Ruby on Rails as the backend component for the full stack development. So what happened was, and then these boot camps, what they did is that they mapped the graduates with co-founders to build their companies. So then if you start your company on that stack and you're growing with that stack, then actually the demand grows. And then with the scarcity with Ruby on Rails engineers, at least from a experience perspective, these new candidates started to become higher and higher in demand. So I think that was maybe what happened, at least in Malaysia. Where even today, our Fave, as we've grown from a 40 people company to a 400 people company, we are and Ruby on Rails is still like the core backend. We're looking, where it's high demand even today. So to answer your question on maybe the salary aspect of it,
maybe the career, not just salary, but just the whole career, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it for me, it was something personal. So for me, what drives me a lot is impact. Impact to users, to people, to humans in general. And not to say that I couldn't make an impact in software engineering. I could. It's technical and very, very much exciting. But to me, I was very much wanting to get closer to the end users. If you see my journey, it's almost like grandparent and then technology and then like getting close. The user is here and getting closer. And to me, that was what excites me. So I really enjoy coding, and every now and then I still dabble in building something on the side. But I think what really drives me is being able to see the usage by end users of our products, right? When we get the aha moment, when somebody actually writes a good review. And I was able to do that in product, which makes me really happy. Yeah. So yeah. I'm really glad that I went through engineering, because you develop a lot of empathy for engineers, and I was able to work better with engineers because of it. But I also would say it helped me back in the transition to product. I had to switch my mindset a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Because that was actually going to be my next question, right? So I've had experience with, trying to get, software engineers into product managers. And that journey is not easy, right? Because you know how the code was. Like in your case, it's even, I would say, in my personal opinion, even harder because it's in the same company. So you literally know the skeleton of the code. You know where all the ghosts, all the skeletons are hiding. You know where it's incredibly inefficient. And how did you take off that hat? How do you make sure that I'm no longer an engineer, I'm a product manager now? I can't be, I can't be like trying to jump into the code. I will just fix this one bug, I would just do this, I would just do that, right? And yeah, and how did you take off your developer hat?
Yeah, Colin, your series of good questions today. It was not easy. So the good thing again about my head of product previously was he knew this as well. He knew this was going to happen. So he already set the expectation. He said, you know what? It's probably going to take you 6 to 12 months to make that mindset switch. I didn't know what he was talking about back then. I was like, what mindset switch? What are you talking about? But on hindsight, it was so true. So, oftentimes when we talk about product management, the three circles, right? Feasibility, business, and then feasibility being technical, and then business, and then UX, which is users. Yeah. And I was living in the feasibility world. So every time, I work with product managers in my software engineering role about building something, we talk about execution, very execution focused. It's how do I develop this? What are the 10 things I need to do in terms of writing this code to make it to deliver the designs that the designers have given? So it was always about feasibility. It was always like, can we do this? How do we do this? So when I switched to a product mindset, I was still in that framework. And every time someone would come to me and say, for example, hey, I think, can we build this gamification feature, for example, or can we build this campaign piece? My brain was already clicking to like, oh, what are the different things I need to do? But with product, it's different. You cannot start with feasibility. You have to start with the why. You have to start with does it make sense for us to build this, and where does it fit in our direction? Took me a long time to get that switch going on right there, and asking the why, debating the why, and forgetting about feasibility first. Because if you don't get the why right, the top of the funnel to make the choice point whether this is the right thing to do, you're building the wrong things. So I think that was a very, very important switch from an engineering role to a product role, to step out of that mindset. Even today, sometimes I fall into the trap. I start thinking about, oh, this is going to be very difficult. And then it blocks you, it blocks you from thinking big, where you should be, product managers should be given the comfort of being able to think big and then start small. So that's something that I actually deliberately train myself to think about. Yeah.
So how did you train yourself to do that? So that I think is what was the secret sauce? Did you remove your GitHub access, or what is it that you did to make that mindset switch?
Oh wow. People, I think my GitHub access was removed maybe only last year, and then slowly I was not allowed to console into the database, which you shouldn't do anyway. But database access was no, cannot code review, PR review, everything. So all those, I do not have any of those privileges anymore. But no, back to your question. Your question was, how did I make the switch? Is that right?
Because you're saying that you had to make that mindset switch, and I guess the critical question is, so what did you do, right? Because if someone who is a software engineer is trying to, okay, I know I need to map my journey into a product manager now. How do I change? How do I make that mindset switch?
Yeah. I think it was probably two things. The first thing was my exposure to working with other product managers or product community, the product community in general. So I really remember like a lot of times when I was, and this is why, it's so important as a peer to give feedback to other peers. So I was working with, different product managers, different walks of life. And I remember, product manager friends, being very good about giving feedback and constantly telling me like, you know what, I think you're making the wrong decision here. Whatever it is, you should think about the user first. Like, what is the concept of user centricity, right? I mean, you should be making decisions that does it make sense for the users? Like, why are you doing this? People were like prodding me, and we have this concept called poking holes. So we encourage people to like poke holes into your decisions, your choice points, and that constantly gave me a lot of like stop me in my tracks and question whether I'm making the right product decisions. So I think having that peer group, and if you don't have that peer group, because sometimes you could be the only product manager in your company, venture out into a community of people to really break into what does product management really mean. So to me, that's the first part, working with other product managers, being very open to feedback, questions, and then being curious and learning from other community people in the product. Then the second thing was I also did a lot of reading. Reading doesn't mean like just product management books, also, although we all read like the Marty Kagan's product Bible and whatnot. But also just a lot of writings on the wall. I actually really like reading stuff that people write on blogs because these are fresh, these are raw, these are perspectives. And the more I read, sometimes more I realize there's no one way to skin a cat. Like just recently I read this. Oh, I think you posted it. You post up this blog about, and it had like it completely switches the mindset. Like people say don't start with solutions, but then actually start with solutions. I think you posted that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So I learned from stuff like that. It really helped me to get into the product mindset.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. So yeah, again, lovely sharing, because I think I resonate with a lot of that. Like, like you say, I read books, but I also find that with less time, books become harder to complete. So in the days before COVID, when we used to be able to travel, I used to read a lot of articles while I was on the train to work, and that was how I would get my quick hits. I used to have this target, 10 articles on the way there, 10 articles on the way back. And then that's yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there about the,
Yeah. And actually what you're doing with PM Huddle and the community is really great, Colin. See, you are really contributing to, future product managers everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you. But like I said, it all always started with, I needed something for myself. And then you realize that, yeah, if you could help yourself, you could also help a lot of other people. Like to your point, right? If you're a product manager, you should be trying to help out other people as well. So yeah, it's definitely, I feel really good that, at least people are saying, there is some value that came out of it. So yes, thank you. Okay, so let's move on a little bit and talk about, now you're the product manager and you're working in, so for those of you who don't know, Fave is a tech startup, and you work with a very hands-on founder, right? So this is usually by far the most questions I usually get about outside of work, when people will come to me, message me and ask, how do you work with, hands-on co-founders? Because I think there are two types of, CEO/co-founders, right? You have the ones who were like, all right, these are the KPIs that I want to see. These are the results I want to see. Okay, go hunt. Then there's the other type who would be like, okay, I really like this idea, blah, blah, blah. And, and those two, they both can achieve the same outcome, but they are working with them is very different. So from your perspective, how do you work with Joel Neo? So he's the founder of Fave, and how do you manage that as a product leader, right? Because obviously it's never going to be perfect. Anyone who thinks that you'll find a company where you get to do everything by yourself, I think you need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid. Or if you think you're in a position that's really, really bad, well, not really also, because, unfortunately, we are people. So everyone has their own opinions and what they want to do. So yeah, how do you work with your founder and your CEO?
Sure. I've worked with Joe for a good 6 years now in varying interactions. So even when I was a software engineer, he was the kind of leader that was very interested in his people. He would walk up, and we had a very flat organization. He would like literally everyone sat on one floor. We could see everyone else. He would walk up to me. I remember this time I was pregnant and just strike a conversation with me. So I think back then I didn't work so closely with him, but now it's like day to day, weekly, we work very closely together. So hands-on founder, I would say Joe is a combo. There are different levels where he's quite hands-on, but he also gives a lot of autonomy and empowerment to the team to basically take the reins and make decisions to go forward, which I respect. And I'm not just saying that, I really do respect him as a leader. So maybe I'll tackle like the question, right? So because there are moments that he is very hands-on, he gives a lot of direction, and there are moments where he gives a lot of, it will be a bit more vague, but that's our job. That's our job, to turn the vagueness into certainty. So in terms of hands-on, maybe what I can, and not just with Joe, but maybe on a general basis, working with stakeholders. I think stakeholders, when we say hands-on, it could mean that they're very solution-driven, right? So they're very much like, I have a hypothesis that I believe it's very true, build it. Maybe that could be an interpretation of what hands-on means. And I think a lot of my discussions with my product management team or my product design team, they always feel very scared when stakeholders come to them with a design. And stakeholders like screenshot the app and then design something and send it to you, and they're like, isn't that my job? So I don't know whether you've experienced it, but a lot of not just in this company, other companies as well, I talk to product managers, and they feel offended when people do that. But I look at it differently. I look at it as you're coming to the table to talk about a hypothesis or concept that you want to validate or invalidate. And they're always, you got to read between the lines. So they're coming to me with a in between the lines that says, debate this with me, talk to me about this, tell me whether this is good or bad. And then it's the product manager's role to step in and actually do the debate. Don't take it as, I think sometimes maybe unintentionally you might fall into it and say, hey, Joe is a founder, he's a CEO, so his voice carries a lot of weight, his opinion carries a lot of weight, and this is directional. We got to remember, it's not necessarily, like, got to take it that founders are reasonable people too. They want to see the success of the company. So if something doesn't make sense, you tell them it doesn't make sense. You got to, step up the plate and debate with them objectively. Why is this a good idea? Why isn't this a good idea? Now, what's the judgment call that we're going to do with this? What's the direction of the company? Is this a problem that we want to fight? Because it could be a big problem, but hey, it's just not within the vision of the company. So I think that is how I've learned to also work, not just with Joel, but stakeholders in general, when it comes to being very hands-on or coming to me with a solution because their personal experiences or personal biases thinks is a good or bad idea. So I think it's something that, it's a skill to train as well in terms of how to tackle these questions. Always read between the lines that it's a debate with me. Think about the big picture. Don't think about this person as just someone you need to adhere to.
I agree. I think I've mentioned this as well before, that especially for CEO who are founders as well, we got to remember this is their baby as well, right? They build this from scratch. So it's not always easy for them to let go. And sometimes it's also not a question of letting go or not. It's just that they are so attuned to what the industry needs and wants. They're talking to different, other leaders as well within the industry. So they have ideas. And they just want to throw it out there. And of course, the initial intention is, I think it's a great idea. And like Wei Jia, like what you said, then we have to, bring them down a little bit. Okay, this is the solution, but let's start with, okay, why is this important? does this fit with, where the company wants to go? Is this the vision? Does it take away from anything else that we're doing? Do we need to do it now? All sorts of questions. I was just telling someone I know just recently, I think, sometimes it's just that they want to be heard. And then after that, our role is to then take that in and say, okay, let me sit on this and see, okay, does it make sense or not? Because I think the bias on the other side, and this is something that I know I do all the time, and I always have to catch myself, is that your first instinct is to, but we don't have, everybody's doing something already, our quarterly goals are set, roadmap already there, and then you feel like, okay, but I have to catch myself, okay, let me really sit down and think about this objectively, and not feel like, either A, my opinion is being threatened, or two, I feel like there's a loss of control, and really look at it objectively, because that's, unfortunately, as a product manager, I know some people always say that, if you're not coming up with ideas, you're not a good product manager. I kind of disagree. Your role as a product manager is to take what's the best idea. It doesn't matter whether it came from you, the founder, the engineer, the janitor, anyone. So,
yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes, know what? Sometimes it's almost like ideas are never original. There's always you come from somewhere, inspired from somewhere. And I think it goes back. I like how you said the instinct part, your first instinct, and I absolutely resonated when you said that. When someone comes to you and then you start going like, but my roadmap is fixed, and I really think that we cannot be married to our roadmap. Yes, we got to be executioner, etc. But I absolutely agree with you. I think when someone comes to this, you gotta sit down. You gotta not think about execution already. Same thing like my engineering mindset kicks in, right? You can't think about execution already. You gotta start thinking about like vision, strategy. Like does this make sense in 6 months? Is this something that's going to be a game changer? Like, okay, let's distill it at strategic level first before we go executional. So I resonate a lot.
Yeah, do you have any either frameworks or tips or tricks that you would use when you come to these situations? Do you usually have a set of questions that you would ask, or do you usually use let's go to the Kano method, or the rice method, or something like that? Is there anything that you do specifically, or for you is always, okay, I read this, let's try this, or I just figured this out, let's try this? Any specifics that you use in order to handle stakeholders?
Yeah. I think, okay, so I would say that, all those rice, I tried all of them. So I would say that, you apply different frameworks at different levels of conversations, or different levels of going deeper into the product. If I had to go with a blanket, like say, you're talking to a stakeholder and you're just, having to make some quick judgments, or, ask some critical questions. So I think it's always very important to ask those critical questions whenever you're dealing with stakeholders, anybody in general, in terms of debating about certain product ideas. If I had to distill at that level, you're in a room, you're in stakeholders, someone gives you an idea. If you can't remember any other framework, you just always start with why, right? Like Simon Sinek's famous, always start with why, ask why, ask why 5 times. To get those critical questions as to why this person thinks this is a good idea. A lot of times, I think you also mentioned it a little bit, the reason why this person could come to the table with this and you don't agree with it is because they have a context that you do not have. And you need to find out as a product manager, what is it in that context that you don't have first. Then the second point is judging whether that context is valid or not. And then sharing your context with the person. So it's almost an interchange of context. So if there's, frameworks aside, I feel the frameworks part happens when you go into the second level. You start collating a lot of different information from people, and you have to build a matrix. That's where RISE comes in. That's where you do your impact effort analysis and manage trade-offs. So I think there's different levels where you apply different frameworks. The first one, where you're dealing in a one-on-one situation, just always start with why. If there's one thing that you remember. Second one, then, is you have a billion things on your plate that you need to do. Then you distill it to those frameworks. Apply and very basic. Apply the RISE frameworks. But again, I don't think you should ever apply frameworks in isolation of the circumstance and context of your organization. For example, what I mean by this is you could apply RISE framework, and RISE framework is premised on like impact. But then if you apply it blindly without correlating it with the mission statement, what you'll realize is that you could be solving a problem that you are not in the position to solve as part of your vision or mission or North Star of your company. So I think that comes with judgment after years of experience as a product manager, how you can ensure that you're not blindly applying like something you read on a blog post.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. So let's move on a little bit. I want to touch a little bit on scaling product teams as well, right? So again, for those of you who don't know, so Wei Jia's journey into product management. So she was a software engineer, then became product manager, then became head of product, and now she's regional head of product, all in the same company, right? So that's why I think you make your story makes a really good listening. And so the question here is, how do you continuously scale the product team, right? Because it's different when it's, you are having one product manager. It's different when you're having 4 product managers. It's different when you have 20 product managers. So how, what is your approach to scaling the team? Like what are the things that you look at in terms of, when is the right time to scale, I guess would be the first question. And second question is, how do you also scale the individuals within the team, right? Because obviously no product manager that I know at least wants to stay as an associate product manager or just as a principal product manager. Like, people want to become, lead product managers. They want to be like senior product managers. How do you manage that? So two questions there, 2 very loaded questions, by the way. So feel free to let me know if that's just crazy.
Oh, no, that's good. So I would say that I've gone through this journey of being a cowboy product manager, a startup product manager, one that, don't really adhere to your typical definitions of a product manager, and then slowly like legitimize ourselves to become a, proper product management team. But even then, there's still a lot to learn, right? So what I mean by that is, I'll answer the question maybe with the journey. When I started out as a product manager, maybe this is year 1 of the organization when the company was at 0 or 0.5. The 0 to 1 to 100 journey. So in that sense, we had maybe 1 consumer product manager, 1 merchant product manager, 1 head of product, 20 engineers, something like that. And essentially there was no I wouldn't say that we had any structure on even say goal settings or vision statement, mission statement. What was that? Not clearly communicated. If there was one, maybe it was at the head of product level, but not widely communicated to the organization such that everyone can directionally align. And maybe that was okay, not too bad, because you were still at the product market fit stage. We were figuring out, we knew there was a problem, we're still figuring out how we're solving the problem. So in that time, I didn't have any frameworks. I didn't have any, I didn't even know what my job description was. I knew I had to work with engineers. I knew I had to organize what the engineers had to do. And I knew that there were problems in the app, like bugs to be fixed, etc. So maybe I started my role as a bug squasher, like CH team, our customer happiness team will come in and say like, oh, this is problem. Okay, fix it. There's that problem, fix it. I didn't really have a roadmap. My roadmap was 1 sprint, maybe. So that was how I started as a product manager. We were solving problems, but maybe not at scale and not necessarily knowing where the direction was. So I think I did that for a while and there's some clarity. I think what really changed things was when my head of product left the organization. So people often see people leaving the company as a very scary thing because, this security blanket, this backup person is like now leaving. How do I make decisions? Who do I go with? But time and time again, I see it as an opportunity. It actually translates into a very good thing because there was a gap. And when there's a gap, then people have to fill the gap. And typically those that are interested in filling the gap would be, again, you give the intent, you get the opportunity. So I was maybe one of a couple of product managers that stepped into a more leadership position after our head of product left. And then I sat down and reflected, what were the problems that I was facing as a product manager that I could solve for the rest of the team? So, for example, there was no such thing as a growth path in product management in my organization when my head of product left. Everyone was a flat product manager. But even then, some people interpreted their roles. So like some people can feel like, oh, I'm senior, so let me just give myself a title. Or some people may feel like, hey, I'm I don't know, people just started giving themselves like really interesting titles. And so I sat down with Joe at that time and said, Joe, I think we need to, give some clarity into what growth meant as a product manager. And I think this will organize the team into a more structured way. And it's very interesting because he came to me, he's like, but if you look at Google, everyone's a product manager. There's no hierarchy there. Like, why does it matter? But I beg to differ, right? If you don't have like clear direction of what a person can go into an organization, how will they know? And if they can't go, how can your company grow?
Yep.
So I think I was one of the first teams in the company that said, I want to build a department career structure. So that's when but I've never done it before. So that's when you look outwards and there's, the world is your oyster these days. Everything's on the internet, right? You look at how these Silicon Valleys structure their organizational structure. And to me, I'm like, there's no one way to do it, but hey, you experiment, you emulate one that you think suits your company. And then you build a structure, give clarity to the team. So we started saying that, okay, we want APMs, we want PMs, we want senior PMs, we want APMs. We want 2 tracks. We want a specialist track, but we also want to build people managers within the product team. So that's like the basic structure that we continue to use today, so that so we could evaluate what level of product managers we need to work on what type of products. So I think that was something that, no one ever taught me. I learned from, communities and internet and so on and so forth. But I feel like that was one of the things I was very glad to do because people started getting clarity on their roles. Yeah. I think other things, and last one, I think other things is also like, how do you define what product managers did what in the organization? Because when you start growing, so maybe when you start with the first product manager, that product manager owns the entire app.
Yep.
Then after that, if you start with a second product manager, how do you distribute it, right? Is it by funnel? Is it by back end, front end? Is it by platforms? I think that's something that, only that organization can answer in terms of what are your goals of the team. Is your goal activating more customer? Then maybe you need to create a product manager role just to focus on user activation, user adoption. Or is your goal, I want to create a strategic product? Then you build a product manager role for that strategic product. So I think those were things that I also learned along the way. Yeah.
Okay, very nice, very enlightening. I wish I could jump into that a bit more, but I actually want to jump into the next part of it. So I will leave this for now, and maybe one day we'll get you back on the show for a second time to jump more into scaling product teams. But just last note on just scaling product teams. I think what we just said is really true, right? There are lots and lots of information out there. So I'll just again, I'll tell a lot of stories based on my own personal anecdotes. I was speaking to another product manager. He was like, "Oh, do you have any scaling frameworks of how do you organize your product team?" I was like, actually, recently, TransferWise, now rebranded as Wise, they actually made transparent their entire product structure.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. So my advice, I guess, to anyone is search. There's somebody who's done it before, and we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. So and I also like the part where you said different teams or rather different organizations structure their product teams differently. For example, how Facebook versus Google, how they organize it is quite different. As then when you look at Amazon, different. And then if you take yourself outside of the FANG tech companies and then go one tier smaller, it's different, right? It also depends on at what stage your company is at. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go to this part which I'm very interested to know more about, and that is on being a female product leader. Yeah, I know some people say, oh, it's so cliche. Well, I don't, for me, it's not. This show has always been about product leaders in Asia as much as possible. In fact, try to zoom in on Southeast Asia even more. And I think we really don't have enough female product leaders, and that's why I think this is a topic that's slightly closer to my heart. And if you've been following this show from the start, I think it was episode 3. I interviewed Sylvia from Zalora, and she was also talking about how it was tough for her when she became a mom. But her context was slightly different because at that point in time, she had been moved to the CTO role. So she was the senior VP, I think, of product, and then she actually made the transition into a CTO role, which was slightly different. But in your case, your story is even more interesting, right? You literally got pregnant, had your kid, and then did product management transition all at the same time. How do you handle that? Not just from at that time, but I mean in general, as a mother of a boy, of a child, not just a boy, but yeah, how do you handle that, like motherhood, being a product leader, and just handling everything all at one go?
Yeah, you know what? Being a mother definitely made me a better person and also better person at work, whether it's better leader, etc. And why I say that is you often hear this term, right? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. So
the one I heard was, if you want something done, you do it yourself. So.
I mean, there's that too. But this goes down to prioritization. Famous, another product thing, right? But it goes down to prioritization. So having my son had made me realize that I needed to be more efficient or prioritize better with how I wanted to get more things done today. After becoming a mom, I actually classify myself as a really time poor person. I just don't have time. And what that meant was I needed to make very important decisions or just be able to figure out how to do more things better. So I think for me, what it really taught me is number one, my family is very important to me. My work is also very important to me, but I would always tell myself to have dedicated time for my family as well. In terms of, and then when I spend time with my son, it's really spending time with my son. It's not just sitting with him. I mean, yes, I sit and look at him, but I actually use all those moments as opportunities to teach him or educate him or turn a playtime into something that could be very meaningful for him. Like right now, I'm on this. Right now, I have a project where I'm trying to teach him how to spell. He's not going to school because of the pandemic. I started reading a lot about phonics teaching, etc., and actually and that to me is like my project to spend time with him whilst growing together with him. So I really have these segments where I would tell people as well, between these times, sorry, I won't be available. I do have a tendency to, I work early and then I finish and then I manage my kid and I could come back later. And to me, it's very important to have those moments where I, read him his storybooks before he go to bed, have a chat with him before he go to bed. It's like daily rituals that I do not want to miss in his lifetime. So I think that's just me in terms of how I think about what's important to me and how I prioritize wanting to do well in work as well as family. Doesn't always work, I'll tell you that, but do my best. I think the second thing also is everyone in my organization knows I'm a mom. I make it very clear. I don't hide it at all. And I think it's important for people to know that as a start, just to know that they can become moms in this organization.
Mm.
For example, I was watching this video by an ex-product manager in from TikTok, and she was telling me why she left. I don't know whether you saw that, right? You did.
It's
And she
all
was
the
saying
rage
like,
now.
it went viral. She was saying that I don't feel I can become a mom in this organization, and I don't want people to feel that. So setting that example, showing people that I am a mom. Ben comes in to like I would have an all hands, and there are times where like I'll say, Ben, come here, you make the intro for the product. And there was this time he came in and he said, "Hi, my name is Ben. This is the product roadmap," and then he like scutters off and do his own thing. So to me that like that was just being cute. But to me, it's wanting to set an example that it's okay. Your kid comes in, interrupts a call. It's okay. You have a life, you have family. That's normal. Normalizing these things for the rest of the organization, so they know that they can have a family and they're not meant to be robots in this company.
Yeah. And I also know that you're alluding to this earlier in our call that it seemed like you had a little bit of postpartum depression as well after you had your son. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know whether you call it postpartum depression, but it was definitely very like angsty for me.
Okay.
Yeah, like okay. So what happened? What happened was I gave birth to my son. Again, like someone told me, my CTO told me before I gave birth to my son, he said like get as much sleep as possible before you give birth to your son. Never understood what that meant till it actually happened. So, do you have kids, Colin?
Yes, I have 2 boys.
Oh, okay. So probably you can empathize with some of this. Don't know whether your wife went through it as well. You had to be there. So I gave birth to my son, and I never knew what sleep deprivation was until he was born. And I did not know that babies just don't sleep. They wake up every 1 or 2 hours every night. And so I went through my maternity leave period, going through that newborn motion where I was just in this sleepy stupor where I was interchanging between like breastfeeding him, like changing diapers, thinking about how am I going to handle this when I get back to work, because I had some help, but I had some part-time help, but night times were just the worst. And I really did not know how I was going to be a mom and work. So I was actually going to quit my job. I was at the stage where I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can have any mental capacity to think about work and be good at it, and it will kill me. And I remember I was like, I said, I need to talk to my CTO. I reported to him. And pick up the phone, called him. I said, Zumi, and I started crying. I said, Zumi, I don't think I can do this. Like, what do I do? I don't think I can come back to work. I'm so tired. And Zumi, thank goodness, he had kids on his own. He's like, why don't you think about remote part-time and take the time that you need? He was very understanding. He's like, thank you for telling me that you can't do this, or thank you for just sharing the troubles that you have. We want you back at the organization, but let's see what we can do about this. So he's like, come in and talk about this. Like, why don't you come in? Let's have a chat. So I remember Ben was like a few months old. I carried in my carrier. I took the train to the office. And I was, as a first-time mom, you're always very scared being alone with the kid, right? I was like, oh no, going to office. So I carried him there. I remember being in conference room with my CTO, and I was just carrying him and then talking to Zumi and just telling him about the struggles that I was having. And he was just like listening very casually, then fell asleep. And we worked out a plan, we worked out a plan on how I could start work and incrementally come back to the organization. And to me, those kind of leaders that was fine with, their priority was bringing back talent. Their priority was not, hey, I need to run a business, and that was the priority too. But they saw long term. If that didn't happen, I would have left the employment industry 4 years ago. So I think we need to see more and more empathetic leaders like this who are thinking long term about retaining female talent within the industry. And I would do that without a blink for the next female talent who want to do this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really good to know. And I guess, for me being a dad myself, um, I think it's also important. So if you're men, if you're listening to this, take this as the hardest slap that I can give you. Don't let your wife do everything, right? Don't be that,
Oh,
yeah, don't be that douche who, because you have a job. I mean, your wife has a job. Yeah, everyone is working, right? Help out. So don't be that guy who just sits around and does nothing. So I'm sorry. I just had to say that because I think men get a free pass for a lot of things, and I think it's really hard if you are a working mom and you're not having enough support at home. I think that also really just makes it difficult for everyone. So yeah.
Oh, you get a gold star for that, Colin. You can say to your wife later. We have proof of that, you know.
Yes, I'll show it to my wife and then she'll okay, now do more dishes, So
Yeah. Good for you, Colin. Commend you.
but it's tough. I mean, and I think in this case, I'm not trying to, take away from, the great female leaders that we have within our industry or even all around. But there are things that I think we need to make sure that things happen. So like for me, the schedule is always, all right, I've got my dinner time with family, so that's my legit time. I'm not going to reply any messages, and then I have to obviously do the dishes. We don't have any help, and then after that, go in and put the kids to bed, and then after that, I will come back and I'll look at emails and start doing what other things that I need to do. And I think it's important for that because I guess it was going to be a question for you, but I guess now it's probably more a statement, right? Because in product management, a lot of people always say, right, work-life balance in product management kind of doesn't really exist. If we're being honest, we can talk about how we need to have the balance, but I think a lot of it has to do with learning how to juggle it. So I'm not sure whether that's considered work-life balance, but I guess that's what most product people do who have families, right? So now I'm going to flip this into a question for you, which is how do you do that? How do you juggle everything as a mom? Because I know just now you mentioned that you become more efficient because you're now a mom. What other things do you do to make sure that you have not just you can function at work, be a mom, but also I guess how do you find time to invest in yourself, like learn more about the industry or just read up about life or just relax, or does that not happen for you?
No, I have to exercise self-love. As in that is something that I learned about myself during the pandemic as well. So I'll try to answer your question in multiple ways. I think the first thing is okay. So someone asked the question before, or rather, you could ask yourself the question and think about it. They always ask you like, how do you prioritize these things in life? I think it was something like yourself, your spouse, your kids, your family, and there was one more thing I cannot remember. And I always used to answer that question with, oh yeah, work. I remember, and the fifth thing was work. So if you had to prioritize this in order of sequence, like how would you answer that? My husband, without a blink, he will always prioritize himself. And I never understood that because I will always say, oh, spouse, child, work, blah, blah, blah. But this pandemic, I realized why you need to prioritize yourself above everything else. Because if you don't, actually everything else will crumble. So I went through a period of time where in the depths of despair during the pandemic, where we had to draw our roadmap, things were challenging at that period of time. Now we're definitely doing much better. I was feeling a lot of self-doubt as a product leader, and I was a fresh head of product at the point in time. And a lot of this, and I was doing so much for the company, for the team, and I did not know I was going through all this pent-up stress that actually translated into a lot of anxiety attacks. And I did not know that they were anxiety attacks until I was in this meeting and I was doing a presentation and I started struggling to breathe.
Wow.
And I had to literally say, okay, I cannot talk anymore. Person A, person B can take over the presentation. And I was having this sort of meltdown, literal meltdown. And after the call, I was wondering what was that physical experience about, like what happened. And I started, talking to some psychiatrists, some therapists. And I'm the sort of person that, like you said, I like to uncover the black box. And when I understood it from a chemical perspective, whereby I was focused on work so much and not caring about myself, I developed all these stress chemicals that the fight or flight mode, right? If you don't do something to release those chemicals, then your body will like contract and muscle up. So what do you need to do in order to fix that? You actually need to spend time on yourself, meaning go and exercise, do a run, release those endorphins, let the stresses out, chemicals out of your body. And that was where I realized, like, I actually started investing more time. I told myself, like, work is work and there's going to be a ton of things, but I don't care. I'm going to go and play some tennis. I'm going to go and do a run, because if I don't do that, I cannot perform for you. So, and then set that as an example to the rest of the team as well, because to show that it's okay to spend time on yourself.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's like one way to answer your question. That it's important to be selfish sometimes as well, as a start for how you balance everything else in your life.
Yeah, technically that's not being selfish though. I think it's just taking care of yourself. And again, right, I don't know about other cultures. I'll speak for the Asian culture because I'm Asian. We always think that, if we're thinking about ourselves, we're being selfish. And I think, that's really not fair. Because like you say, right, if you don't take care of your own mental health, how are you going to help an organization? How do you be a good product leader if you can't even keep it together or have a way to cope? So I don't think it's selfish at all in any respect. I think it's just being responsible, right?
Yeah. If anything, I hope that's a reminder for anybody else that's a workaholic like myself. You got to really spend time for yourself. Do some self-love. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess just last question on this, part of being a female product leader. Are there any struggles of being a female product leaders that you feel that you want to let the listeners or viewers know on how we can be better as an industry or as leaders, of how we can help? If you don't have it, then it's fine. I'm just throwing out the question out there.
I think that it's sad to say this, but I think it's something we need to do more as an industry. Is consciously think about how to bring diversity into your organization, not just females, but diversity in general. I think a lot of times people look at, I have a business goal, for example, and I think I need this person to fit within that profile in order to drive the business goal. But a lot of times I feel that diversity is the thing that brings the quality of your product and performance up to the next level, so that you don't fall into that collective biasness or herd mentality within your organization. So I think it's important, and it has to start from the top, that you embrace this kind of diversity versus building a completely homogeneous organization. And if I translate that back to females, I think more specifically, and my husband does this a lot, he actively thinks about, do I have enough representation of female leaders or female people in my organization? How do I bring females upwards in the organization? He thinks about this a lot, which I commend him for. Sometimes he might not get, sometimes people might not understand why he does that, but I like it that he does. He's and I think, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, always think about that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right. We've actually gone on for quite a bit. Not the longest episode by any means, but I'm always conscious that once we hit the 1 hour mark, I try not to do a full Joe Rogan. So all right. Yeah. All right. Let's go to the last section. This is always usually my favorite section, which is about the song. So I always ask all guests to choose a song which they would like to recommend to listeners and viewers, whether they feel like it's a representation of who they are in music, or whether it's just, something that they like to listen to. Doesn't matter. It's just a song. So yes, please tell us about the song that you chose and why.
Yeah. So I like this song, but I also have a lot of interesting reasons why I like this song. So it's My Universe, which is a collaboration by BTS and Coldplay, two bands that I really love as well. Yes, I'm a BTS ARMY fan as well. So you know, uh, I love Coldplay is a nostalgic kind of a band that I enjoy. I think mostly because in my dating years with my husband, we actually went to see the Coldplay concert, and that to us was, and we both love Coldplay, and getting to see them live, they are such an amazing band. Chris Martin is so talented. He might not have like the best voice, your standard musical lyrical voice, but he is such a great musician, right? So really, really love Coldplay. BTS is a phenomenon. Like they have really elevated, Asians to the next level in ways that's so unimaginable. And I think they've been so strategic about it. I think that's the thing. They have been so strategic about penetrating like the Western market whilst preserving their, Asian culture and making it and really like making everyone so crazy about them, the whole how you Korean wave and their songs. So I think they are just an amazing kind of a band, and it's just a good song. It's just a catchy song. If I'm down on a Saturday, I'll be like, let's just turn it on and just makes everything better.
Nice. Did you go to the Coldplay concert when they went to Singapore? Like what, 3 years back, 4 years back? I can't remember now.
No, I didn't, but I went to the Coldplay concert when they were in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, when they were in Sydney. And yeah, it was great. It was amazing. I would totally go again if they come back to this part of the region. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So fantastic. So the song was called what? My Universe, a collaboration between Coldplay and BTS, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think I've only had one other guest who was a K-pop fan. I think it was Jonathan. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice. I don't see a lot of male BTS fans, but good.
he's like otaku all the way. So
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
yeah. So I'll put the link up here again somewhere up there to the episode from Jonathan. It was very interesting, and yeah, he's yeah, it was a great session. So yeah, so thank you for the song, and also in general for sharing your thoughts, being super honest, super open. It's not easy for everyone to really talk about their struggles, to talk about how they started out, all the zits and whats and everything in between. So yes, I really appreciate that. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers do as well. And as the last question for the show, do you have anything that you want to leave? Whether it's a quote or a saying or a story, I don't know, whatever that it is that you want to leave with our viewers and listeners before we go.
Sure. I think if there's one thing, never let fear or discomfort stop you from pushing and achieving your dreams, so to say. I think there's always this one quote that keeps me alive, like courage is not the absence of fear, but the knowledge that there is something more important than fear that you're going for. The brave might not live forever, but the cautious never live at all. So I always hold that, because I'm a person that sometimes, generally everyone gets scared in life, but I don't think that should ever stop you from going forward and achieving what you want to achieve. Yeah.
Super profound, super profound. So yes, that was Chen Wei Jia, the regional head of product for Fave. Yes, I got it right this time. So yes,
Well
and
done.
yeah, okay. So thank you everyone for this episode. I just wanted to close this episode by just saying, for those of us in Southeast Asia, the markets are opening up. People seem to be going back to work. Please be safe. If you're not vaccinated, please go and get yourself vaccinated. Otherwise, I will reach through this screen and I will punch you. And yeah, just take it easy. Don't just go all crazy, because we're on the way out, and I'm super thankful for that. But we're also at a stage where, if we're careless, a lot of good work over the last year and a half can be undone. So be safe, wear a mask, get vaccinated, drink lots of water, because the Chinese Asian way is water cures everything. If you're sick, you drink water, right? If your body feeling hot, drink water. I bet you, even if they could, they probably tell you if you have cancer, you can drink water. So I'm sorry, I'm just making Asian jokes right now. All right, goodbye, bye bye, and I'll see you at the next episode.